Hey everyone, Bradley Jack Design here with another design breakdown, this time my Lauri Markkanen graphic, which I created to show the progression from the beginning of my 365 project to where I am now. The progress is amazing and insane. It really just shows that if you put the time and effort in it, you'll definitely improve your skills of design. So let's hop right in here and show you what it took to make this graphic. So I've got some background photos here to start everything off. I ended up putting these in the end. I didn't put these in initially, but I basically have these two photos of Lauri. I have them masked out with a gradient map applied to them just to make them darker, to make them gray to black. They're slightly different because this one is going to become brighter with the lighting effects that we have on it. That's why this one is lighter here. So in the background, I also have this image of this bowl that you can barely see here. So I've got a lot of stuff actually on this bowl. Let's take a look and see why. So I've got set to multiply this bowl running. This is his shadow with a gradient map on top of it. But since we can't really see it, let's go ahead and turn on the layer that is the court in the background so you can actually see what the heck is going on. Here we go. So this is the court I have. It's the same background as the photo of Lauri that we have on here. I have it blurred out with a motion blur or a path blur of how he's moving. I have it blurred out except for this middle part where his foot is. And then on top of that, I have a multiplied layer to darken it, and then a gradient map to make it black and white, which is actually only set to 10%. It just sort of darkens everything up. So that's what we have for the bottom layer. So now you can actually see some of this stuff down here. So the shadow layer actually you can't see. This is probably a pointless layer that I could delete, but I'll just leave it in there now. So I've got this bowl that I just really shottedly masked out. As you can see here, you can see all this area where I didn't mask it out, but with all these other effects on top of it, you can't tell. So I have a gradient map on top of it to make it black to gray, to really darken it up. Really what I wanted in this is just so you to be able to see sort of the highlights of this bowl. So I have a levels layer on top of it set to multiply to darken it up more so you can really only see the horns. Another levels layer to darken up more. A levels layer set to screen to brighten up some parts. And another one set to color dodge to brighten up again. So these two layers here of levels are set to multiply. The other two are set to screen and color dodge. So that's the bowl image himself. So on top of that, I actually have this subtle smoke layer. Just adds a little bit of smoke, a little bit of texture over here. It's just a photo of smoke with a gradient map applied to it to make it black and white for some reason. Don't know why I did that. But then there's a gradient map of red and black. So you can see this is what it looked like originally. I just really dulled down the color so you couldn't see it that much. Let's hop up here and take a look at the layer with Lauri in it himself. So got this nice photo of Lauri. I have a smart filter of a blur gallery. That's a path blur of him going this way. Because if you think he's sort of swinging this way, the ball is moving this way. And I went ahead and blurred out everything except for the ball moving here, a little bit on his hand here, and then his feet down here. And I used a soft brush to do that. You can see the mask down here. I probably used a 20% brush to just subtly put back in that blur and make it not too much to see. I've got some layers here. I'll explain in a little bit. Let's scroll back down and see what we've got going on here. So I've got his signature on here with his number. So what we have here is a bunch of layers, as you can see. So this layer here is just the number 24. So I have, what is this? This is a layer with nothing in it? Cool, let's get rid of that. We don't need that. So what we have here is his number. This is just text set to a smart object. Or no, it's not. With a stroke on it with no fill, so it's just white. And then on top of that, to give it a little more coloring, I just put a gradient of red on top of it so it wasn't so bright white. It's got a cool effect having just this gradient of red on it. Then on top of that, I have his signature here. So this is, as you've seen in other videos I've made, look, it's a card that he signed. So threw the card that he signed in here, inverted it, masked it out so it's only the signature, And then I have a levels layer applied to that to get rid of the edges. On top of that, I have a gradient map that is heavy black to heavy white, super contrasting to turn it white. And then on top of that, I have a couple color lookups. So I have one called Crisp Warm to give it a little bit more of a yellow hue, and then one on top of it called Candlelight, which gives it a little bit of an orange hue. And then on top of all of this, I have a layer that's just the signature that is red that I turned on, and I have that set to 75%, and I have it masked out just like the 24 in the background. So that's how I got the signature and number on that. And then I did the same thing on the text on the side. So I just took the 4 stars from the Chicago flag, got his name, got his position on the side using the same outline, the same text that I used here. And then on top of it, I put a red gradient on top of it to give it a little bit of a color, but it's still sort of like a gradient going from red to white. So if we come back up here, let's take a look at some of the lighting. So here's a ton of lighting. Let's get rid of all of these layers. Here's a group. Let's see what's in here. Oh look, more lighting. That's super fun. As you can see, there's a lot of lighting layers that I put into this. So it all started off probably with this layer here, which I use in almost all my designs. I went ahead and masked out part of it over the bowl so you could see the bowl, so it wasn't highlighting the bowl too much. I have a levels layer to get rid of the edges, to just have this glowing from the side. And then I have a gradient map on top of it with the bowls red, white, and black. So to go along with that, I added this light bokeh that you see here. This is set to 50% at screen. I went ahead and gave it a gradient map of white, red, and black to have a little bit of a red highlight there. I had some lens dirt that I colored red. These are all set to screen, by the way, at different percentages, just to my taste of what I want it to be. If it was too bright, I made it 50. This one I set to 75. This one I have some floaters over the whole design that I have set to 50 at screen with the same gradient map on top of it. And then I have some more floaters coming from the side. This one has a levels layer on it to get rid of this harsh edge. So I turn that on, it gets rid of the edge. Then I have the same gradient map applied to that to tint it red, again set to screen. And then the bottom one I have set to screen as well. Some more highlights and sparkles coming across with levels to get rid of the edge and a gradient map to turn it red. So that's what this first batch of lighting is. I have a levels layer applied to all of this to darken it up, just so you can actually see Lauri. I didn't want to take away from the editing job of Lauri himself, so I went ahead and added a levels layer. On top of that, I have some more lens dirt for depth. I didn't tint that one red. I wanted it to be more realistic with lens dirt. And then on top of that, I have this big white highlight that I have a levels layer set to what? That doesn't do anything. Why did I put this there? Oh well. Normally I have this to darken it up a bit. So you can see it darkens it a little bit. I'll just leave it at that for now because why not? And then I have 2 color lookups on it. So I wanted to make this light more realistic. So I added a crisp warm filter to it, which you can see adds a little bit of yellow to it, darkens it up a bit. And then I have the same candlelight applied to it, which you can see really makes it orange, really makes it a warmer color. So I didn't want it to be so harsh and cold. So that's why I added these color lookups to the lighting. So that's the lighting. So since we have that lighting, what I wanted to do was I wanted to make it so there was a highlight around Lauri himself. So what I did was I duplicated this layer of Lauri. I went ahead and selected this layer. If you hold down the command key and click on the layer, it'll select whatever that layer is. I went up to select, modify border, and I did a border at 10%. So it's selecting the 10 pixels, 5 pixels in, 5 pixels out. And I went ahead and blurred it, or I took the selection and I feathered it 5%. And what I did then was I masked that layer. So that's what you can see here is it's a mask of just the border around him. So let me select that. And I went ahead and masked just to the areas that would be hit by this light. So I didn't do anything over here on the right hand side. So I masked Lauri himself here with the same blur effect to it set to color dodge. So if I turn that on, you can see it's adding the world's most subtle glow. But then I have another layer set to screen of the exact same thing, which adds to it. So the left side of him is glowing from where this lighting is hitting him on the graphic itself. Then to add some depth to this, I have this same signature blown up huge with a Gaussian blur set to it. The Gaussian blur is set to 25 to really blur it out. And actually what I did was I put a gradient on the smart filter so the left side wasn't as blurred as the right side wasn't as blurred as the left side. And then I have that crisp, warm color lookup applied to it. So you can see here it's really cold, doesn't really match the graphic, but if I turn this color lookup of crisp, warm, it turns it that more realistic yellow hue. So I added a signature to the front. It's set to screen, by the way, to add more depth to the front of the graphic. Then I went ahead and added through my logo in the bottom left-hand corner. Super easy. Don't need to show you how I did that. And then I have some lookups. So this is the final graphic. You can see it looks completely different. This looks cool just by itself. Could probably post this and people would like it, but I went ahead and put a gradient map set to 10% with the bulls red, white, and black on it. It looks like this, just if you care. I have that set to 10% just to give a little bit of a tint of red, and you can see the effect that it has on the graphic. Then I took the same exact gradient map set to soft light at 20%, which gives it a little bit more of a red hue, subtly, not too much. I went ahead and have that filter of soft warming. I have that set to soft light at 25%. And then on top of that, I have the Kodak 2395, which I use in most of my designs, which gives this sort of faded effect. And then on top of that, I actually have the exact same color lookup set to 50% to fade it even more. And that's the final design. So it's some color lookups to warm up some of the whites. It's lighting effects, making sure that this photo, I can see initially, the reason I put it up here was because this photo, you can see there's highlights coming from this side. It's really coming up from the top, but it's coming up from the top left. So that's where I put the lighting and then made sure the lighting effects affected my subject with these glows. And you can see here, this is where the shadow is. So it makes it look realistic. So make sure if you're putting lighting in something you make sure the light source in the image matches the light source of the photo you're using. It even works for this bull too, because you can see that the lighting is hitting here. It's coming from the back left-hand side. Then I put a bunch of overlays on it to add depth. I think the logo down here is something cool that people might use in the future to add depth to things. And then just some playful treatment of the text on here. So if you like this breakdown, let me know. Let me know in the comments below what breakdowns you want to see from me in the future. Other than that, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.